Massive power outages have swept across Spain and Portugal. What do we know and what has been affected? How's the population reacting? How's the US population going to react when that very thing happens here? Because it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. We're going to be talking about that coming up next on Minuteman Preparedness. Hey, so welcome back to Minuteman Preparedness. So we're going to jump in and talk about this massive power outage that swept across Spain and Portugal and other surrounding areas. So apparently it began around 12:30 local time. That should have been yesterday for us. All the power went out. Kaput. So what was affected? Well, most importantly, their critical infrastructure was affected. Transportation sector. The airports, no planes in, no planes out. Trains, subway systems had to be evacuated, emergency evacuations because the power went out, the trains stopped, they didn't stop at the platforms, they had to get people out of there. Water pumping stations quit working, and along with that, I would assume their sewage pumping stations, if the water went out, I would assume their sewage pumping stations went out. Traffic lights went out. Phones, internet, ATMs, electric vehicle chargers, everything done. Some reports I saw, they stated it was pure chaos. So, you know, that's huge. That's huge. Spain and Portugal and all those surrounding areas, just all the power's out. Massive traffic jams were caused. I've got some photos I'm going to throw up in just a little bit for you so you can kind of see what's going on over there. It was crazy looking. Renfe, R-E-N-F-E, which is Spain's national railway company, stated that the entire national electric grid was cut off. Government officials, along with the larger power company over there, which is Red Electrica, stated that the cause was unknown at this time, but cyber attacks had not been ruled out. Madrid's mayor called for all of the residents to keep their movements to an absolute minimum and to, if at all possible, stay where they were. So some of the grocery stores over there had large issues with panic buying. You know, I don't know if maybe these stores had some sort of, generator backup or solar backup or whatever, but there were several stores apparently that were still operational, and it was chaos in there. All of the water and, other type of emergency style, short-term supplies were all purchased up. As of earlier this morning, several hours ago, they had started being able to restore some of the power to the southern and northern portions of the peninsula, but it would involve a gradual restoration of the power. One, because they don't have it all up yet, and two, even if they were able to just get everything back to working, they just can't flip a switch and, all the power in Spain and Portugal and those surrounding areas is just going to cut back on. It doesn't operate like that. They have to do small, gradual spots, just like when power goes out, during a hurricane, or any other type of natural disaster. The power company has to slowly kind of get the grid back up and running in those areas. So I'm going to throw up some of those pictures for you real quick, and then we're going to come back and talk about what about when that happens here. Because like I stated, it's not a question of if it's going to happen. It's a time deal. When is it going to happen? So we'll come back and talk about that here in just a minute. All right, so after seeing some of those pictures, it kind of makes you think about, if you hadn't thought about this or prepared for it before, kind of makes you think about, hey, maybe I should go out and go ahead and buy some water, some non-perishable foods, maybe some extra hygiene and toiletry items, paper plates and cups and forks. That way, if the power goes out, you can use those things and trash them. You don't have to worry about washing them and things like that. But like I stated, it's not a question of if this type of situation is going to happen here in the homeland. It's a question of when is it going to happen. And even if you don't want to think about a large scale situation such as what's happening in Spain and Portugal right now, think about it like if you live in an area that has hurricanes and the power is knocked out for several days, a week. The mountains of North Carolina, there are people up there out of power, for weeks, months plus. How would you react to that? Like I said, you don't have to think about it in, if this was a cyber attack on the grid, which I feel it probably was, for everything to go black at a certain time. Not even talking about that, but if a natural disaster occurs, how are you prepared when the power goes out? These are things you have to think about. You have to get yourself prepared now. You can't wait until, like these people did, they waited until it happened. And then they were lucky and able to find a place where they were able to go purchase something. Okay, well, the store has backup power, but the phone lines and the internet's not working. So they're cash only. Do you keep cash, emergency cash? Do you keep some in your home, some in your vehicle, and some in your wallet or your purse, stashed away in there just for a situation like this? Or do you rely on the little tap or the swipe, the plastic? That's not going to do you any good when the power goes out. Or if the internet and phone lines go down like they did over there. That crap's not going to help you. You have to have some emergency cash on your person, in your vehicle, and in your home. They always say you need to have $1,000 cash on hand at any given time. Now, most of us aren't walking around with $1,000 cash in our pocket and in our vehicle, and I probably wouldn't do that. But at least have some in your home. Have you a couple 20s in your stashed away in your wallet or your purse, a couple 20s hidden in your vehicle. That way you have it. So if something like this does happen and that store does have some power, at least you have some cash. Because I've been to the gas station when the swipe, tap was down and they had a sign on the door that said cash only. There were people walking up and turning around and walking out. Well, I walked on in there and did what I needed to do because I was prepared. I had some cash. But these people don't need to be running to the store during a situation like this. They should have been prepared. We have been, me and hundreds of other people that deal with this genre of information have been preaching and telling you all to get yourselves prepared. Me nor anybody else expects you to run out there and drop, $5,000 on, emergency food and water and, personal protective items and, projectiles to go in those items and, all types of survival and camping gear and books. No one expects anyone to do that. Me nor probably most of you have the disposable income to do stuff like that. You have to do this slowly and gradually, a little bit at a time. Go to Walmart or, Dollar Tree or Dollar General or whatever type, of dollar style store you have. Top ramen. Yeah, it's not healthy. It's not the best thing for you. Certainly wouldn't eat it 3 meals a day, but you can get it super cheap. That, noodles, spaghetti noodles or pasta noodles, super inexpensive. They store for a pretty good amount of time. Pasta sauce, again, very inexpensive. As long as that jar that seal on it's not busted and that cap is suctioned down and you can't pop it back and forth, you know, they're not expensive. Store them up. Canned chicken, you know, canned tuna, beans, rice, all of these different things you can purchase a little bit, you know, $5, $10 here and there, store it away, you know, put it in your garage, in a plastic container, under your bed, in a closet, you know, just keep the sunlight off of it and the moisture off of it, you know, kind of keep it in a climate controlled area. Buy you a case or two of water here and there, 1 or 2 1-gallon jugs at a time. Store it away, you know, think about it, $5 or $10 here and there, and if you do $10 a week, $5 a week, think about where you're going to be in, you know, 2 or 3 months. You know, or even if you only had a month and you stockpiled a little bit here and there and something does happen, you know, and the power's out for 3 or 4 days, well, you've got this stuff already and it costs you $25, you know, but you've got a decent little setup for a few days and you can keep expanding upon that. These people in Spain and Portugal didn't do that. And so they were left to run out there and jump into all of that madness in those stores and hope that there was going to be something left and hope that they were going to be able to purchase it. Don't find yourself in that position. Do something about it now. Get some food and some water and some supplies and store them away for situations like this and other situations. Any type of emergency situation, water and food stored away is always going to be helpful. And you can rotate through that stuff. You don't leave it sitting for years on end. You know, a month or so later, pull out that box of spaghetti noodles and that jar of sauce and replace it and use what you pulled out. Be prepared. These people weren't prepared. Most of you all are probably not prepared. This situation, I believe, was a cyber event. But even if it wasn't, a lot of these people are screwed right now until everything can get back online. Don't find yourself in that situation. Look at what these people are having to deal with. Fix yourself, get yourself ready, so when it does happen, whether it's physical attack, cyber attack, or a natural event, you're prepared. But, you know, heed this information, take my words of advice, and do something and get yourself prepared. But with that, we're going to end it there. You all stay safe. Have a great day. And Minuteman out.